Okay, this is Jamie Rambo here. This is my response to David T. in his article he wrote up for me called Torah, Bound by Law or Not. I'm just kind of chilling in the living room tonight. Wanted to go ahead and make a vocal recording of this and a visual so everybody could see. And at the same time, I feel like it's easier for me to communicate through speech. Jason's in the room with me tonight. He has his headphones on. You want to say hey?
Hey guys.
Alright, that was him saying hey. I'm going to go ahead and read the intro here that David T. brought about. He said, "Praise be to God, may I present this in a way that is clear and concise. I am looking to bring evidence from the Bible, both Old and New Testament, that proves the law was only temporary until Jesus died and was resurrected. This is not an easy task. I must wait on the Lord for revelation. I must not lean upon my understanding, but I shall follow the Spirit's guide." Now, what I do want to say is I really respect this part right here where he says, "I must not lean upon my understanding," because if your cup is already full, you have no room to learn. And I'm the same way, you know. I'm not coming into this assuming I know everything. I'm a human. I know nothing, but here we go. So he starts off with Proverbs 3-6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding, and always acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight." That's very important we use this scripture. Okay, so let's move on. Job 36, he points out here that God is talking about the one who has appointed him his way, and who has said, you have done wrong. Remember that you should exalt his work, of which men have sung. All men have seen it, man beholds from afar. Behold, God is exalted, and we do not know him. The number of his years is unsearchable. Of course we do not know God, because he's the invisible God. He points out here, now that being said, God has given us a promise, and he is not a man that should lie. And of course I insert right here that, David, you're right, Hebrews 6:18, God did this so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. Remember that we always need to keep for the hope of things to come, things that have not already happened. We move on to John 14 here. "I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, that he may be with you forever. That is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it does not see him or know him. But you know him, because he abides with you and will be with you. I will not leave you as orphans, I will come to you." Of course, this is talking about Yahovah, the Hebrew name of Jesus. Move on to John 15:26. "When the Helper comes, who I will send you to from the Father, this is the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father. He will testify about me." Once again, Yahovah. John 16:7, then 13-14. These aren't numbered right here, but that's okay. "But I tell you the truth, it is to your advantage that I go away, for if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. But when he, the Spirit of truth, Yahovah, comes, he will guide you into all the truth. For he will not come to speak of his own initiative, but whatever he hears he will speak," basically whatever God tells him, "and he will disclose to you what is to come." And then he says, and last but not least, John 14:26, "But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I said to you." Now, with the help of Christ, and this is David, through the Holy Spirit, let us look into the scripture for truth. Let's start at the beginning in the garden. God supplied all things for Adam and Eve, grace. They were naked and not ashamed before God. They had no knowledge of sin. The tree brought knowledge of good and evil, just as the law brought the knowledge of sin. I'm pretty sure that's what he meant to say here. I'm going to go ahead and fix this for him. Bam. Let's move on. What I'm going to do is kind of paraphrase these verses for you guys, and they'll be up on the screen so you can look at them, pause it if you wish. Genesis 2:16-17, where he says, "From any of the tree in the garden you can eat, just don't eat of that one tree that gives you the knowledge of both productive and destructive, or good and evil." Genesis 2:25, "And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed," of course. Genesis 3, this is the part where the serpent, beguiles them. David says that the woman added to the word of God, did not have faith in God, and ate, giving also to Adam, and that's correct. What I want to point out here in my little insert is you also must remember that it was eating of the fruit, i.e. breaking of the law, that was their downfall. And I don't dismiss the other aspects of it. Of course, there's a lot more happening there, but that's also one of the things that happened there. And he makes that clear in Genesis 3:17 to Adam when he says, "Because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. cursed is the ground. Let's move on here. Genesis 3:6. Basically, when she saw the tree was good for food, it was a delight to her eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise. So she took from the fruit, ate it, and she gave it to her husband, and he was all like, I am dumb, and he ate it too. When their eyes were open to good and evil, basically when they ate of it, their eyes opened, that's when the knowledge of sin came. I completely agree. Genesis 3:7. Then their eyes were open, they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together. You gotta ask yourself, how did they get needle to sew? I'm pretty sure what they did is tie it together. Nevertheless, moving on, Genesis 3:10, he said, I heard the sound of you in the garden. And actually what that says is I heard the voice of God. This must be the NASB translation there. And I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree? And it's funny because you know he already knows they did it, but he likes to ask questions like that to set you up. Romans 3:20 here, because the works of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. And I want to add in here, it's important to note that he's not saying Torah does nothing. He's only speaking that it doesn't justify any action. Justification comes about when you're not in the right. Basically, you sinned, and thus the law has nothing to do with that. Righteousness, however, does come from following the Torah. And I think that's one thing that a lot of us get mixed up, and even I did. I had a revelation tonight where I finally was able to split those two words up in my brain. That justification and righteousness are two separate things. Righteous is you doing all right, or at least that you have been justified and can now be accounted as righteous. And then David adds here, so then the fall of man had occurred, followed by a curse because they didn't trust God. While I understand what you're trying to say, David, I don't think that that's all. You know, they also made up laws, as you pointed out. Eve said that she couldn't touch of the tree, so that, you know, that was kind of the rabbinic side of it, adding doctrine. And then they broke the only one that existed, which was, ironically, a dietary law. And since this conversation is, you know, kind of around dietary, Sabbaths, and feasts, I thought that was kind of ironic. By the way, I wanted to point out right here, Hosea 6:7, but they, like Adam, have transgressed the covenant. There they have dealt treacherously against me. So you see here, and by the way, this word Adam is sometimes translated as man, but if you go look at it, it's Adam. It literally is speaking about Adam. He transgressed the covenant with God, and so have they. So it's definitely about breaking the law as well. Now in the next verses, David T says, show that God gave all animals and creatures as food for Noah after the flood. You know, I was going to put something in here, and let me go ahead and read this verse, so I don't act like I'm skipping over it, but Genesis 9:2-3, the fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and every bird of the sky, with everything that creepeth on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hands they are given. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you, as I gave to the green plant. Now, here's what I want to say. This is definitely up for context grabbing, and we can assume either way. And so, since your side, David, is assuming that all animals are available to eat, and I'm not saying it's without merit, I want to throw my side out there, which is, and I should have grabbed the verse for this, you guys can look it up yourself, it's pretty easy, that when Noah was bringing the animals on, he had to bring 7 of each clean animal, and he only brought 2 of all the unclean. And so at this point, when he's getting off the ship, if God's telling him that he can eat of the unclean animals, then he would have stopped procreation at this point, and we wouldn't have had unclean animals left on this planet. That might have actually been doing us a favor. But it's something to think about. I don't think it's clear and concise that God's saying that Abraham can eat all animals. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and move on, as you say here. Now let's move on to Abram and Abraham. Now, Genesis 12:1-3. Now I know I'm talking a bit fast, guys, but I got a lot of scripture to go through. So now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. And the ones who curse you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Okay, so I added a little O there, but sometimes I like to ad-lib. You can read it. And David T points out, so above God is telling Abram of all the great things that God will do with and in his life. Notice his name is Abram at this point. Now, David, thank you for pointing that out, because I had never noticed that before. I love learning new things, and noticing that his name changed was a big deal to me. You know, it's kind of cool to learn that his name was the Exalted Father, as he points out here. This is the Strong Literal Concordance. That's Abram in Hebrew right there. And then you got the phonetic Ab-Ram. And then he says, here we see that the righteousness of God by faith exhibited by Abram. And I'll kind of let that comment go for now, because I'm going to get into the faith thing here in a bit. He moves on with Genesis 15:1-6. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not fear, Abram, I am a shield to you, your reward shall be great. Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, since you have given no offspring to me, one born in my house is my heir. Then behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said, this man will not be your heir, but one who will come forth from your own body, he shall be your heir. So I'm going to kind of skip over this. You guys can read the rest of that. And he said, notice that it's one-sided promise, a promise to Abram. Abram believed God, and he was accounted as righteous. What did God tell Abram? He told him to look towards the heavens and count the stars. Why stars? Well, earlier in the book of Genesis, God tells us what the stars are for. I'm going to kind of ignore the stars thing for a second, because I think I get to that here in a few. But what I want to point out here is James 2:23-26. And the scripture was fulfilled which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. Ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works, when she had received the messengers. I'm pretty sure that's going to be angels, but whatever, angels and messengers are the same thing. And had sent them out another way. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. And there's several verses that say this. You know, you can go to Google and type in faith without works is dead, and you're going to come up with Romans, and, you know, I'm not sure Galatians says anything about it, but nevertheless, Paul has it all in his writings. And that's something that I want to point out. That's very important. Faith is just belief. And remember, as man, I wonder, I don't remember who it was, but someone said that, you know, the demons also believe, and they shudder. So, faith and belief are the same thing. If you don't have any works, it's dead. And for me, this is non-negotiable. You have to have both sides of the coin. You can't just say, I believe in God, and do nothing for him. But, you know, let's move on. Genesis 1:16-17, David points out here, God made the two great lights, and the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And I want to point out that's the sun and the moon. He made the stars also. God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. They are to give light upon the earth. This is a revealing of the gospel message revealed from the beginning. And then he goes on to point out John 18:12. Then Jesus again spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. Now, I see what you're saying here, David. You're trying to say that the stars, or maybe the light and the lesser light, are the revealing aspect. But what I want to point out here is in Proverbs 6:23, for the commandment is a lamp, or a light, and the law is light. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light. Thank you for making me repeat myself. And reproofs of instruction are the way of life. So I'm going to disagree right here, respectfully, and say that I don't believe that the stars are the revelation. They're meant to be for signs, and that when Jesus is speaking of the light of the world, he's speaking of the commandment as the lamp and the law as the light. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's something to think about. Psalms 47. Then I said, Behold, I came in the scroll of the book, it is written of me. Look to the heavens, look to the light of the world, as David says, and believe, and you will be blessed. In the entire volume of the book, it is written of him cover to cover. I completely agree. I think we should look to the heavens and aspire to it. However, as I pointed out in Proverbs 6:23, the light of this world is Torah. Let's move on. David points out, with the giving of the law came the blessings and the curses. These cannot annul the promises given earlier to Abram, exalted father. Now there is, but in law, we can't separate out the laws we feel we can keep. They must all be obeyed. That I completely agree with. I'm not going to contest that. If you follow the law, you must follow all of the law. And honestly, that's kind of my point. Numbers 15:16. There is to be one law and one accordance for you and for the alien who sojourns with you. Okay, now something I want to point out here, that there is one law for us, that's Torah, and that there is a law for the sojourners. As you cannot expect a traveler through your land to get all the Torah within a weekend, you must have a standard that they can easily follow. This is also the attitudes of the Gentiles when Yehoshua came to us, or Jesus. Give them the simplest part of the law so that they can at least have a standard. The full law would be taught as they grow in faith, and I really feel that that's what Paul is saying to the Jews and the Gentiles in the letters is, don't tell the Gentiles that they must be circumcised in order to have salvation, because Yehoshua never said that. Basically, tell them to keep the bulk of the law, and as they grow in faith, teach them all, because you can't be of the nations through your entire life. At one point in time or another, you have to join his new covenant, and we'll get into the new and old covenant thing here in a minute. David also points out, Deuteronomy 28:1-2, Now it shall be, if you diligently obey Yahovah your Elohim, or Lord your God, be careful to do all of his commands which I command you today. The Yahovah your Elohim will set you high above all the nations of the earth, or Gentiles, as that would be a direct correlation there. All these blessings will come upon you and overtake you if you obey Yahovah your Elohim. Now, David, I almost called you Paul there. Notice how it says being careful to do all his commandments. There is no room for partial obedience. Partial obedience gives way to curses. Okay, I don't know if you're making a slight jab, and so I put this in here, and it's also because I want to openly, tell everybody this. I don't want to be, acting like I'm able to keep all the law. I've openly admitted that I can't go to Jerusalem or Jerusalem for the feast. This does not mean that I do not follow all of the law. I do. However, I sin. This is no different from any of the previous followers of Torah or any present ones. Yehoshua, the grace of God, is my salvation. Now I understand if I'm going to keep all the law, I have to keep all of the law. And my excuses will be to Yahovah and Yehoshua themselves. And I'm not saying they're going to be good enough, but what I will tell you is it's not because I want to only follow the rest of them. Believe me, if I could, I would have been in Jerusalem for all the feasts and for all the festivals. I'd go there every single time. It's just not practical for me. But nevertheless, I'm just throwing that out there. As Messiah also came to remove the curse, just pointing out right here, partial obedience gives way to curses right here. As Messiah also came to remove the curse, Galatians 3:13, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a pole, and then there's also, hung on a tree and whatnot. So I don't have to worry, and this is me adding in, this is not part of the verse. This is the verse, obviously. So I don't have to worry about any of the curse from the law, as Messiah became that curse for me. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, or what's trying to explain about the curses, is that Yehoshua came back to destroy the curse, not the law. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Deuteronomy 28:15. But it shall come about, if you do not obey the Lord your God, to observe all his commandments and his statutes, with which I charge you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. But that's not the end of the story, as David says. Praise be to God. He knew we would fail. He remembers our frame. He created each and every one of us. He had given us the promise of a Messiah, a suffering, and a Redeemer. And see, we agree completely there. Messiah is the salvation, and he's also the one who annulled the curses. Let us move forward to Isaiah 49:5-9. And now says Yahovah, who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob back to him, so that Israel might be gathered to him. For I am honored in the sight of Yahovah, and my God is my strength. He says, it is too small a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the previous ones of Israel. I will also make you a light of the nations, so that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. Thus says Yahovah, the Redeemer of Israel, and its set apart one. to the despised one, to the one abhorred by the nations, to the servant of rulers. Kings will see and arise, princes will also bow down, because Yahovah, who is faithful, the set-apart one of Israel, who has chosen you. Thus says Yahovah, in a favorable time I have answered you, and in a day of salvation I have helped you, and I will keep you and give you for the covenant of the people, to restore the land, to make them inherit the desolate heritages, saying to those who are bound, go forth. To those who are in darkness, show yourself. Along the road they will feed, and their pastures will be on all bare heights. David adds, notice it says he is sent to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore Israel. I will also make you a light unto the nation, Gentiles. I'm glad he knows that. It's so funny that they separate those two things as if they're different. They're not at all. And I will keep you and give you as a covenant unto the people, all people. And I agree with that. I must also point out that the 12 tribes of Israel and a motley crew were there for the giving of Moses' law, and the Torah was meant for all people as well. Either way, let's move on. Isaiah 42:1. Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations, also Gentiles. Again, God delights in Jesus. He puts his spirit upon him, and he will bring forth justice to the nations, so David says. And that's very true. Once again, we have the justification apart from righteousness. I'm just showing that to justify means that you've done something wrong, or it means that at least an action is in question. Righteousness, there is no question. It's already been judged. Matthew 3:16-17, David points out, after being baptized, Jesus came up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending as a dove and lighting on him. And behold, a voice came out of the heavens and said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Now with the next verse, I want you to see something very important. David says, Isaiah 42:4-5, he will not be disheartened or crushed until he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands will wait expectantly for his law. Thus says God, the Lord, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and its offspring, who gives breath to the people on it, and the spirit to those who walk in it. And David points out, notice he will not be disheartened or crushed until, and the coastlands will wait for his law. In this verse, God is telling us that he is giving authority to Jesus to give a new law. Okay, here's what I want you to do. David, I would like you to go to Isaiah 42:4-5, and I want you to look up this word law right here, because it's Torah. It's literally for his Torah. It's not a new law. In fact, there's no word new here, and his law is Torah, and this will be in the part 2. This is my response to you, and then I'm gonna make my video so I can show you my track of thought, and that way we can both at least continue down the thought train. Either way, I just wanted to point that out. Go look up the word law, and you'll see that that's Torah. It's nevertheless. Let's move on here. Isaiah 42:6-7. I am Yahovah. I have called you in righteousness. I will also hold you by the hand and watch over you, and I will appoint you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the Gentiles, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the dungeon, and those who dwell in darkness from prison. Such a good verse. And we move on. David shows me Isaiah 42:8. I am Yahovah. That is my name. And guys, Lord right here is the Jewish or Catholic carry on of Adonai, where they don't want to really use his name, you know. And I've already made some stuff on the name of Yahovah, and Jason and I are going to finish that video coming up within the next 10 years. Nevertheless, await that. But anyway, I am Yahovah, that is my name. I will not give my glory to another, nor my praise to graven images. Dang straight. Graven images. Exodus 32:16. The tablets were God's work, and the writings was God's writings engraved on the tablets. Completely agree. Isaiah 42:9-10. Behold, the former things have come to pass. Now I declare new things. Before they spring forth, I proclaim them to you. Sing to Yahovah a new song. Sing his praises from the end of the earth, you who go down to the sea and all that is in it, you islands and those who dwell on them. He is telling us that the former thing, David says, the old covenant, will come to pass with his suffering servant. If you make his soul an offering for your sin, he will see you as his child. And as I point out right here, I completely agree. The old covenant has passed. Sing his praises, those who come down to the sea. I really think he's talking to the Gentiles here about singing a new song, but I'll leave that up to you guys for interpretation. Singing a new song is not that big of a deal for me. It kind of really means that we love the Torah now, instead of, doing the works and, just waking up and this is what I gotta do, that kind of thing. But either way, leave that one up for interpretation. I'll kind of get into that in my part 2. Isaiah 53:10-11, David points out, "But Yahovah was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offering, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahovah will prosper in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, and he will bear their iniquities. Never again will he be angry with you, but he will bless you, but according to the old covenant." I'm not really sure what you meant here, David, when you kind of added this in sentence right here, but according to the old covenant. I don't really know. I know that this sentence is talking about this next verse right here, Isaiah 54, but let me go ahead and point out something right here. I know that most of you are going to know this. You're going to be like, duh, Jamie, why did you even bring that up? But this is talking about Yehoshua. Either way, let's move on to where he says, "Never again will he be angry with you." Isaiah 54, 7-10. "For a brief moment I forsook you, but with great compassion I will gather you. In an outburst of anger I hid my face from you for a moment, but with everlasting loving kindness I will have compassion on you, says Yahovah your Redeemer. For this is like the days of Noah to me, when I swore that the waters of Noah would not flood the earth again. So have I sworn that I will not be angry with you, nor will I rebuke you. For the mountains may be removed and the hills may shake, but my loving kindness will not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace will not be shaken, says the Yahovah has compassion on you." And then he goes on to point out here, in Hosea we are told that God will stop all Sabbath and appointed days. Okay, well, yeah, let me hold off real quick there. Never again will he be angry with you. So, God's saying, for a brief moment I forsook you, and with great compassion I will gather you. I feel that this is talking about the end days. I do not feel like his anger is gone from us yet, and nor do I feel like with great compassion he's gathered me. I could be wrong. I'm just going to leave that one up for interpretation. It wouldn't surprise me either way if God still got angry, or if he doesn't get upset anymore. Maybe he's just gotten used to the degradation of humanity. After 6,000 years, I wouldn't blame him. So let's move on to in Hosea. We are told that God will stop all Sabbaths and appointed days, is what David says. Hosea 2:11. "I will also put an end to all of her gaiety, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all of her feast assemblies." Now, here's the thing. He's talking about Israel while they're playing the harlot, and he's definitely not saying that he's going to put a stop to all Sabbaths and all appointed days, and he certainly doesn't say that it will be done forever. He is only saying that because they've played the harlot and they've gone to other gods and they're no longer part of his covenant, that they don't get to do their feasts or their new moons or their Sabbaths or the feast or assemblies anymore. And I mean, come on, that's understandable. That's all the good stuff. The Sabbath is rest. The new moon is what brings upon the new year. The feasts are for joyful gathering. They're going to get all the good stuff while they're out there playing the harlot. And God's like, I don't think so. And he continues right here. He says, "Now we know that God divorced Israel because of sin." Completely agree. "But he promised to take her back." And I agree to that. "He was once a husband to her, and again, even after she was defiled and adulterous, he promised to bring her back." And we see this here in Jeremiah 3:8. "And I saw that for all the adulteries of the faithless Israel, I had sent her away and given her a writ of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear me. But she went and was also a harlot." Also, I don't think I can say that twice. Either way. Hosea 2:14 through 17, 19 through 21, and 23. And once again, David, you didn't really number these very well, but that's okay. You guys can go look it up for yourself. "Therefore, behold, I will lure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak kindly to her. Then I will give her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt." Once again, bringing up the salvation right there. it will come about in that day, declares Yahovah, that you will call me Ishi, and will no longer call me Balel. And it's actually Balal, or Baal. How do you say it? Baal, thank you. Okay, yeah, so it's Baal, and Ishi is, man. Yeah, so he's actually saying here that you will call me man, and no longer call me Lord. And that's an important part about our modern day worship, I will say. His name is Yahovah, or any derivative of the format you wish to pronounce it, but his name is not Lord. And if you read the story closely, they were all calling him Lord, Lord, and that did not make him happy. So I'm just going to move past that. That's another video for another time, but it is something to look into. He doesn't like it, and I don't blame him. Lord is not his name. Lord is a title. And it can be given to humans, it can be given to angels, it can be given to a whale. That's the Lord of Whales. Or, the Lord of Flies. Come on. He's got a name. Either way, let's move on here. Then you will know the Lord, it will come about in that day that I will respond, declares Yahovah, I will respond to the heavens, and they will respond to the earth. I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will also have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. And I will say to those who are not my people, you are my people, and they will say, you are my God. I will say, you are my Elohim, but that's because I know Hebrew a little bit. But according to Torah, this cannot happen. Now, I'm going to automatically disagree right there, because there is a way, but let's move on to your verse, because I respond after that. Leviticus 21:7, they shall not take a woman who is profaned by harlotry, nor shall they take a woman divorced from her husband, for he is holy to his God. Okay, now, according to Torah, this cannot happen, as David pointed out. Well, someone who's profaned by harlotry, you're not a harlot after you're forgiven. You can't continue to be what you once were. The sin is no longer imputed upon you. Now, as far as a woman divorced from her husband, for he is holy to his God, right here, and I gave you a New Testament verse, but of course you can look this up in the Old Testament. It's definitely there. So yeah, it's definitely there in the Old Testament, but I like to use New Testament when having conversations about Torah, simply because, as you know, there's this whole Old Testament, New Testament rift, and as you show at the end, at least you have come to a conclusion that they're together, and that I can appreciate. But either way, here we go in New Testament. Romans 7:2, and this is Paul. We love Paul, don't we? For the woman which hath a husband is bound by the law to her husband, so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loosened from the law of her husband. So this is the main thing I want to point out here, but according to Torah, this cannot happen, but it can. And it literally states that it can. If the husband dies, they're no longer bound to that covenant. And when it says bound by the law to her husband, it's literally by the covenant that they take. It's not the law of Torah. It's and I'm not saying Torah doesn't also say that, but what I'm saying is when you get married, that is a covenant. And that's a whole nother issue. The word married doesn't actually exist in the Bible. It's literally, they just make a covenant. So by the covenant, they're bound, but if the husband dies, then there is no more covenant. And so she is freed from that covenant of her husband. As you can see here, she is loosened from the law of her husband, which would literally just be mean of her man, since there's no words for husband or wife in the Bible as well. But I just want to show that you can remarry according to Torah, and that's what Yehoshua did. He came back, he died, he became a curse for us so that we could remarry Yahovah to a new covenant. And now I'm going to get into the new covenant thing here in a minute, but let's just continue on here. David points out Deuteronomy 24:1-4, right? And it says, when a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, and puts it in her hand, and sends her out from his house, and she leaves his house, and goes and becomes another man's wife. And if the latter husband turns against her, and writes her a certificate of divorce, and puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies, who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her again to be his wife, since she has been defiled. For this is an abomination before Yahovah, and you shall not bring sin on the land which Yahovah your Elohim gives you as an inheritance. So basically, as you can see, that's structured. If the first husband tells her that she's indecent, gives her a certificate of divorce, and she goes marries another man, if that guy divorces her, or if he dies, he cannot go back to the first husband. But we don't have two husbands here, so it doesn't really apply. We only have God, and that's it. So when God died, she was able to remarry, and she could remarry God. Though I'm sure that's a really confusing one, but I definitely know that Torah does not point out that you can't marry your dead husband, who then becomes alive again. Either way, this is not the case as far as, let me read what David posted. I'm sorry, let me go back. David says, "Now in Jeremiah, God prophesied that he would make a new covenant with the house of Israel, not the one he made with their forefathers," and then he puts in quotations here, Torah, or parentheses. This is not the case as far as the Torah goes, because Torah was not the covenant. Here's what I want to point out. I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to type it out as I continue, because this seems to be a big misconception among people. I'm going to make a covenant with you right now, David, and as you cannot say no, I'm going to assume that you said yes. Here we go. Here's the covenant. I have an apple. Alright? I give you the apple and say that you cannot eat of it. And I know this is kind of a parable, but or a parallel of Genesis, but let's stick with it, okay? So I give you the apple and say that you cannot eat of it. Now, if you eat of it, I will spank you, because that's your punishment. If you do not, I will buy you ice cream every 7th day. Every 7th day. Alright, now, we both accept these terms, and you eat the apple, or let's just say that you don't eat the apple. Do we then call the apple the covenant? No. You cannot call Torah the covenant any more than you can call the apple the covenant. Because the apple is just an object, and it's part of our agreement. It is not the agreement. Just like Torah itself is not the agreement. It had parts to it. God says, you follow my Torah, and I will bestow blessings or curses depending on what you do. Now that's the covenant. But when he gets rid of the covenant, that just means that the agreement itself is gone. There is no longer an agreement of blessings and curses and, following the law. But that it doesn't eliminate any part of it. It just takes away the first agreement and they make a new one. Just like if I were to take away the spanking, right? Yeah, let's take away the spanking because that makes more sense. God got rid of the curses. If you eat of it, I will... Now, instead of cursing you or spanking you, I will rebuke you, and I will tell you how to get back on the path so that you don't eat of it, and I can continue to buy you ice cream. Just because I changed the curse part does not mean I nullified the rest of it. And of course, I could have made a complete new agreement without the apple, and I could have done it without the ice cream, and it could have been completely new. I don't think that's the case, but even still, I just want to point out here that just because he says he gives you a new covenant, you cannot call the old covenant Torah, because Torah was just a piece of it. I know I kind of rambled there, but let me move on here. Jeremiah 31 through 34. Now, behold, days are coming, declares Yahovah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel. Once again, I want to point out, new covenant does not mean old covenant equals Torah, any more than the new covenant equals grace. Grace is just a part of it. Either way, with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant which I made with the fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. My covenant, and notice, of their fathers, with their fathers. The Gentiles' fathers were not the ones who came out of Egypt, were they? So, who's he making this new covenant with? Still the ones who were his children, the Israelites, the Jews. You have to come into the fig tree in order to be part of the covenant. And he makes it explicitly clear here, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers. So anyway, that's an interesting thing I wanted to point out to you. My covenant which they broke, obviously they did, although I was a husband to them. He divorced them, rightfully so. But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel, once again, house of Israel, not with the nations or the Gentiles, after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. What I want to point out here is it's God talking, and he says, my law. He doesn't say parts of it. He doesn't say my law with the exception of dietary Sabbaths and feasts. He says my law, and the Torah is exactly what he's talking about here. Once again, if you go to Jeremiah 31 through 34, you're going to see Torah. It's exactly what it is. Anyway, sorry. They will not teach again, each man his neighbor and each man his brother, saying, Know Yahovah. And that doesn't mean they won't teach Torah or anything else. It just simply means they will not go to their neighbor and say, this is God, because everyone will know him. For they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahovah, for I will forgive them their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. And then David goes on here and he says, In their sin I will remember no more. No law, no sin, no punishment, no wrath. Life and blessings, not according to Torah. I hope I have made this understandable. The Lord has guided my hand and my heart. This is how the front of the book lines up with the back. Remember, cover to cover in the volume of the book it is written of Jesus. So we are left with the promise to all who believe. What goes around comes back around. And I've just put a little input here. I said, I agree that sin will be remembered no more, but that does not mean sin does not exist. Also, keep in mind, you must fit the bill of salvation in order to be forgiven. This is all not given to all men, or all men would be saved and it wouldn't matter what you believed. Obviously, God is not going to forgive every single human on the face of the planet, because if that was the case, then you could take the mark of the beast and you'd be fine. There are things that you must do in order to reach salvation. Either way, David then posts Ecclesiastes 1:9, that which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there is nothing new under the sun. And then I just kind of added here, this alone would destroy the new quotation marks here, or like law aspect of thought. You know, there's nothing new. Everything that has been has always been. Even Yehoshua's salvation and grace is nothing new. David had grace. You know, Moses had grace. He still had punishment, but so does everybody. Everybody gets punished because that's the love of God. Here's the final thing I want to say in response. This was very well put out. Thank you very much, David, for taking the time to show me your train of thought. I still think we need to follow Torah, and I still think that that's what Yehoshua taught. I'm going to post this as a response to you, let you watch it. I'm also going to make a part 2 of this video in which I just kind of run down my train of thought, and then you can respond to me what you think about that as well. Much love, shalom, and I appreciate this entire conversation. It's been a very healthy one for both sides, I think. I hope you pray over this. I hope that you meditate on it, read it twice. I had to read yours 3 times, and before I was ready to respond tonight. And hopefully this argument and this debate can be put to rest, because it is a very important one. As you say, are we bound to Torah? Are we under Torah? No, we're not being judged by Torah. Being judged by Messiah. Do we need to do Torah? Absolutely. I think it was written on our hearts to do so. And my final note is, and I say this with all respect and love, and I hope you take it the right way, wouldn't you think that Satan would want us to think, as believers, that we could do whatever we want as long as we just believe in God and the Messiah, and we'll still be saved? It's just something to put out there. And I'm not saying you're being tricked by the devil. I feel like you're a very godly man, David, and you actually can carry this on with respect. I hope I've been respectful to you as well. And I guess that's all I've got to say here, man. Much love, bro, and I'm going to try to get part 2 done tonight, and hopefully you can get both parts at once. That way I'm not responding to yours and then I forget about the other one. But much love, and continue praying and meditating. Peace.